Notre Dame knocked off USC last night by playing grown man football. There's really no other way to slice it. They ran the ball, controlled the line of scrimmage, and made big plays on defense when they needed it most. And not only does the win keep the Irish in the CFP race for this season, it's one of those games that we're going to remember for a long, long time. Sunday Night Live starts now.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome in to Locked On Irish, your daily home for Notre Dame football. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. I'm thrilled to have you here with me live on Sunday, October 19th, or if you're listening on Monday, thanks for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Really appreciate everyone being here. I literally just got off the plane a couple hours ago, so we're a little bit late starting Sunday Night Live tonight, but I wanted to come on here, do my instant reaction show, or I guess it's not really an instant reaction show, but really just want to talk about the game because it's all I've been thinking about since really the game ended last night. It was an awesome game, awesome environment. So glad to be there. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Also wanted to remind you to please subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching the show right now, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, all that stuff. Or if you're listening to the podcast, please follow along wherever you listen, whether it be Apple, Spotify, or any other platform that you might be using. Really appreciate everyone who continues to support the show. It's been a great season. Saw a couple people over the weekend that watch or listen. It's always great seeing those people out there in the wild. But tonight's show is absolutely packed. First, going to break down how Notre Dame was able to beat USC with a dominant ground game led by an all-time performance from Jeremiyah Love and an offensive line that answered the bell with one of their key starters out for this game. And then the defense, they had to come through. They made the biggest plays when it mattered most. And then there was obviously the third phase of the game. It wasn't perfect on special teams, but Jadarian Price's kickoff return really swung the game. Then we're going to talk about what this means for the college football playoff. As hesitant as I have been to talk about the college football playoff ever since Notre Dame started 0-2, now that they have this win under the belt, going into the bye, this is a huge win, and they are right there in the mix. And we're going to talk about why the defense is trending up under Chris Ash and some things that need cleaning up, like the red zone operation, just the kicking in general, not just field goals, but kickoffs. And then we're going to talk about how Notre Dame was able to finish the job in this game and why this win felt so different, just given the uncertain future of the rivalry, the offseason drama between these two teams, Chad Bowden, that whole storyline, and why I think this one just landed so hard for the fan base, and you could feel that in the stadium last night. I'm also going to be taking your questions live throughout the show. We have some people in the chat already. Isaac Morris says, let's go. Love the enthusiasm here on Sunday night. And let's see. Here we go. Chris Walls, Joe Otting legacy game. That's right. Some people are saying it's Jeremiyah Love legacy game. I'm one of those people, but we also got to talk about Joe Otting, who had an incredible debut, or at least as a starter. He was really good for the Irish offense. And we got another one, Carlos Garza. Let's go. Again, appreciate everyone joining in live. Now let's dive into the why. And sometimes football is a real simple game. Like, what is the most common cliche that coaches use when they talk about keys to the game, things like that? Like, I try to not use it every week when I do these game previews because I don't want to be too repetitive. But it's like Bill Belichick always has, like, got to stop the run, got to establish the run, win the turnover battle. Like, you hear that all the time from coaches, right? It's dry, it's pretty boring, it's so simple, right? But more often than not, if you are able to run the ball effectively and you're able to prevent your opponent from running the ball and you win the turnover battle, you are going to win way more often than not. And that's exactly what Notre Dame did against USC. They ran all over them on offense. They finished with 306 rushing yards on 44 carries for an average of 7 yards per carry. And that doesn't even that takes into account sacks. So they actually lost some yards. With their running backs, they were running all over them. And then meanwhile, USC, who, by the way, just ran all over Michigan the week prior, and even though it's been somewhat of a down year for the Wolverines, you know they're going to have a good defense and they're going to be able to stop the run. They're a very physical team. Well, USC ran all over them. They ran for 68 yards against Notre Dame on 29 carries. They finished with 2.3 yards per carry. You're not going to win many games when the rushing disparity is that significant. And then in the turnover battle, that was also a huge factor in this game. Not only did Notre Dame have just one turnover, USC had 3 turnovers. Notre Dame also stopped USC on 2 critical 4th downs, and I think those are basically the same as turnovers. So if you take those all into account, Notre Dame basically won the turnover battle 5-2 because Notre Dame also got stuffed on a 4th down earlier on in the game. But that is the difference. It's really that simple sometimes. When you win the turnover battle and you're able to run the ball like that, you're going to win a lot. And Notre Dame just completely dominated. And the reason that they did and the reason that they were able to run the ball so effectively is, one, because of Jeremiyah Love. He had the best game of his Notre Dame career, and this is going to go down in history as like the Jeremiyah Love game. I talked about it in the preview. Legends are made in rivalry games, and legends are made in the Notre Dame USC game. Drake Bowen even mentioned it during his press conference last week, and I talked about how Xavier Watts is a prime example of that. Like going into that USC game in 2023, he was just like a good safety for Notre Dame that Notre Dame fans knew about, but he wasn't a big-time player in the national spotlight. Well, then he went out there, had the game of his life, one of the best defensive performances we have ever seen from a Notre Dame player against USC, against the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. And then he ended up winning the Bronco Nagurski Trophy Award that year for the best defensive player. And then he followed that up with a monster season last year, and then he capped off that regular season with a 100-yard pick six to seal the deal against the Trojans. So plays like that, games like that go down in history. And Jeremiyah Love's performance against USC is absolutely going to go down in history. He finished with 24 carries, 228 yards. He averaged 9.5 yards per carry. So he was basically averaging a first down every single time he ran the ball. He had that one touchdown to start the game. He also had 5 catches for 37 yards. So he finished with 265 total yards on offense, and 107 of those rush yards came after contact. They just could not bring him down. Credit to the offensive line. They were opening up holes for him all game. Even when USC knew he was going to get the ball, it didn't really matter. The line was dictating at the line of scrimmage, but also when guys had a chance to bring him down, Love wasn't going down. And even if they did get him down, he was still going to get an extra 2 or 3 yards. It was all night long, and he set the tone from the opening drive. Because, look, USC went right down the field, and they scored. And I'm thinking, all right, here we go. This could be another track meet. This could be just like Texas A&M. We're going to see how Notre Dame responds. And at the time, the weather was not that bad. The weather was a big factor in this game, but at that time it was pretty dry in the air. I think the field was still a little bit wet because it had rained a lot earlier in the day. But then Love has that huge run, and then he gets a touchdown run. You're like, okay, Notre Dame is going to be just fine. But it wasn't just Love, because Jadarian Price had a great game as well. Price finished with 13 carries for 87 yards and a touchdown, and he had the 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. So the Notre Dame running backs, Jadarian Price and Jeremiyah Love, they combined for 474 yards, total yards in this game. That is truly insane. And we have been talking about this running back too and how they're clearly the best 1-2 punch in college football. Like, I didn't know where Price fit in terms of like all the other backs in college football. Like, I felt very confident that Jeremiyah Love was number 1. I didn't think Price was far behind. I thought he was a top 5 back. Like, Notre Dame might actually have the best running back in college football and the second best running back in college football in their backfield right now. And they just rode those guys to victory. CJ Carr didn't have the best game. We're going to talk about that more in segment 2, but he didn't have to. When you can run the ball like that, it doesn't really matter. And USC just could not do anything to stop these guys. But on offense for USC, they were able to move the ball effectively, so they were going to have to try to keep up with the scoring pace early on in the game. The defense definitely gave up yards, and we talked about that going into the game. It was pretty clear that USC was going to get yards in this game. They're extremely talented. Like, Jane Mayava is a good quarterback. Mekhi Lemon is a top 3 wide receiver in all of college football. And you knew you were going to have to score points, and the defense was going to have to come up with some critical stops late in the game. And that's exactly what they did. The most notable thing about Notre Dame's approach to this game defensively was the fact that they moved Leonard Moore from boundary corner, which is his natural position. It's one he has played pretty much his entire Notre Dame career except for one game last season, his first ever start when he filled in for Christian Gray at the field corner spot. And he actually did not play very well in that game. Now, granted, it is his first start, so that's to be expected. He was also going against Colin Lacey, the wide receiver on Louisville, who had a really good game. But we had talked in the pregame and all that stuff about whether or not they would actually move Leonard Moore inside because Devontae Smith missed another game due to his calf strain. And I was like, look, they might do it, but that doesn't guarantee that he's going to play, to the level that we expect from Leonard Moore, because it's hard going from boundary corner where you have the shortest side of the field to not only being on the field side, but you're also in a crowd now because you're in the middle of all these defenders, and Mekhi Lemon is really good. And USC put him in the slot more often than not so that Notre Dame would be forced to make that adjustment. And Leonard Moore was amazing in this game. He gave up that one big slant early on in the game when Mekhi Lemon just kind of beat him on the route. It happened. But other than that, Leonard Moore was terrific. They couldn't really get anything going. He only allowed 36 yards on 3 catches in this game. Mekhi Lemon finished with, let's see here. He finished with 4 catches for 76 yards. He had a long of 42, though, so most of that production came on one big play. So the fact that Notre Dame was able to hold him in check was huge. Now, because they were so focused on stopping Mekhi Lemon, they did give up a bunch of yards to Jacoby Lane. He finished with 6 receptions, 111 yards in that long touchdown. But still, the fact that Notre Dame was able to keep their run game in check and not let Mekhi Lemon beat them is a big reason why they were able to hold USC to 24 points. And it was an up and down day for Christian Gray, to say the least. But I think this is just going to be the Christian Gray experience, because he's going to make some plays that make you get really irritated. He had some bad penalties in this game. He got beat a couple times, but then he'll come through with a huge interception like he did in this game and like he did last year with his 100-yard interception return for a touchdown. And I think we all have to be honest here. Lincoln Riley did help out Notre Dame a little bit with some of his decision-making. I cannot believe what he was doing on that 4th down when they had Mekhi Lemon come around and try to throw it downfield. The first play after he had that huge catch downfield. So when the coach is making decisions like that, he even admitted after the game, it's like, yeah, that was a stupid call. But Notre Dame took advantage of it, right? Because they still forced the fumble on Mekhi Lemon, and then KVA was right there to pick it up. And that was just a critical moment in the game. And then on the 4th down call, when they decided to not just run a quarterback sneak, and then they rolled out to the right, that was a gift from Lincoln Riley for sure. And then credit Notre Dame's defense. They were ready for it. They had guys covered. And those are the 2 biggest reasons why they won the game, honestly. It's because they ran the ball, they stopped the run, and they won the turnover battle. And those 4th down conversions, the ones that they did not make, act as a turnover. So that was the difference in this game. It's a difference in so many football games, but on a game like this, on a stage like this, that's how Notre Dame was able to do it. So we're going to check in on the chat here. It looks like there's a debate going on over whether or not this is live. It is live. Jimmy Page, I don't know if that's the guitarist from Led Zeppelin, but Jimmy Page says, Tyler, raise your right arm if this is live. It is live. We do one live show a week every Sunday night now. We're doing these going forward. We got another one. Caesar Penalillo, watching the live show from Woodland Hills, California. A little delayed. Have a great week, Tyler. Appreciate it. Appreciate everyone who's been joining in. We're going to continue doing these, to be honest, throughout the season. So far, I've had some fun interactions early on. But yes, it is live. It is meant to be interactive. The other shows that come out during the week, those come out every morning at 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. And then I release the podcast early because I pre-taped those the night before. But keep chiming in the comments. We're going to get to questions at the end. But coming back after this, we're going to break down how this game sets the Irish up for another run in the college football playoff and what they need to improve in order to be a truly great team once again. Because it was a great win, but it was not a perfect win. We're going to talk about all of that right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. All right, let's take a look at Monday Night Football tomorrow night. A lot of crazy games in the NFL today. Still got one more tomorrow night. Actually, 2 more. They're doing all these like double header Monday night games, which honestly kind of makes the Sunday slate not that great. But you know what? We're going to look at the Lions-Buccaneers game. The Lions are 5.5-point favorites, but you know what? I just love what Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers have been doing this year. So I'm going to take Tampa Bay plus 5.5 on Monday night. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Today's episode is also brought to you by Quo. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly known as Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. Their built-in AI agent is a game changer. It can answer after-hours calls, capture leads, and keep businesses moving even when you're off the clock. Whether you're a solo operator juggling everything or part of a larger team, Quo makes it easy to stay responsive and professional. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's quo.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. So if you've been watching or listening all season long, you know that I said that after the Texas A&M game, I did not even want to consider talking about the college football playoff because Notre Dame started 0-2. They didn't look really good in those games, and they had a lot of stuff to clean up. And when you start off 0-2, I didn't know if Notre Dame even had a chance of making the college football playoff, even if they finished 10-2, and there was just so much time. But now that they have won this game, now that they have won their 5th game in a row, they're 5-2. They have their first win over a ranked opponent, although USC fell out of the AP Top 25. But tell me how this makes any sense. So Notre Dame beats USC 1 week after USC dominated Michigan. And right now, Michigan is ranked 25th, and USC is not ranked. Like, how does that make any sense? USC just dominated them. I don't understand how Michigan keeps getting the benefit of the doubt here. Yeah, they beat Washington, which is a pretty decent win, but they're just not that good of a football team. So it's unfortunate that right now it doesn't count as a ranked win because USC is not in the top 25. They're basically 26 of the teams receiving votes. They are right there with 97. The next one after that is Utah with 40. So they're probably going to make it back in the top 25 here shortly. But that's still a really big win, even though they're not ranked right now because it is their second loss this season. They also lost to Illinois on the road earlier in the year. That is a big win. So now that Notre Dame is in this position, they're currently 12th in the AP poll, we can start talking about the college football playoff. And at this point, I feel like if Notre Dame does win out, they will make the 12-team college football playoff. I'm not sold on the idea that they're going to necessarily host a game yet. I know that people are throwing that around, but maybe. Like, who knows? There's been all kinds of chaos going on in college football yesterday. There's all kinds of stuff, too. Some big-time upsets like Texas Tech looked basically unstoppable in the Big 12, and then they lost to Arizona State. So upsets are happening every single week. These things are going to move around. But for now, Notre Dame is 12th, and they're in really good position because of this win. And they definitely would have been out of the college football playoff race if they had lost that game. Like, it was truly an elimination game for Notre Dame. It was the definition of a must-win, and that's exactly what they did. It's their first ranked win of the season. And in the first half of the schedule, they played 3 ranked teams in the first 7 games, including 2 teams currently in the top 10. Miami fell to Louisville on Friday night. That's not ideal for Notre Dame. You want Miami to keep winning. You want Miami to win the ACC championship, so that way that loss looks better. But Texas A&M was able to hold on. They beat Arkansas after a pretty valiant effort by the Razorbacks in the fourth quarter. Texas A&M was able to win that game. They are currently 3rd in the AP poll. So Notre Dame has their first big win of the season, and I think the teams that they beat are starting to look better. Even though Miami lost, Texas A&M continues to win. Arkansas, like, that win looks better, especially from the angle of the Notre Dame defense in that game, because Notre Dame's defense shut them down in that game. But since that performance, Arkansas has been back out there putting up a bunch of points on every team that they faced. Notre Dame held them well below their scoring average, and they did that against USC as well. Even though they gave up some yards, USC was a top 5 offense in basically every statistical category going into this game, and Notre Dame was able to hold them in check for the most part. So you look at this schedule here, and you think about what Notre Dame has to do the rest of the season. Obviously, they have to win out. They have a bye coming up next weekend, and then after that, they go on the road to take on Boston College. Boston College is really bad this season. They are awful. I thought they could be like a sneaky team. They were last year in Bill O'Brien's first year, but they have been awful this season. Then they have Navy. That's going to be another night game. Navy has been solid this year. They're 6-0. I don't know if they're actually going to be ranked. They barely beat Temple this past weekend. They won 32-31. So that could be a ranked matchup. But we saw last year, like, Notre Dame played Navy in a ranked game, and they won by 50. That was a complete demolition in that game. Navy never stood a chance in that one. So even if they're ranked, I don't really think that's going to be that difficult for the Irish. And then they play at Pitt. That game could be tricky because they have figured out their quarterback situation. They have some really talented linebackers. So maybe they'll be able to get another ranked win. But the fact that they got this win over USC in prime time with so many people watching was a really big deal, because then they got Syracuse at home and then Stanford fresh off a big win over Florida State last night. So their schedule is significantly easier now. They are much more likely to finish 10-2. And I did not think this would be the case after A&M. I was like, man, I don't know if you could chalk up any single win left on the schedule as like an automatic win. But now that the defense has figured things out and the offense has so many different playmakers, I feel much better about their chances. And the biggest thing that they had to fix after the A&M game was obviously the defense. And they continue to play better every single week. And even though the offense has been the strength all year, we saw that they can improve as well. Like, this was CJ Carr's worst game by far. He looked nervous to start the game. I don't know how affected he was by the conditions. Again, it was dry early on, but in the second half, I don't really fault him at all. I don't know how much it came through on the broadcast, but it was awful inside that stadium. It was fun for sure, but the weather was a disaster. The wind started to really pick up at the end of the first half, and there had been concerns all day about whether the game was even going to be played. Like, I don't know how many people know this. This was in real jeopardy of not even happening. That was something that was being talked about. They had to figure out some potential contingency plans, like the idea of the game being played today on Sunday was thrown around, but that wouldn't really make sense for USC and their schedule. And both teams have a bye next week, I believe, but USC wasn't going to make another trip back out to South Bend, and Notre Dame wasn't going to go out there. So there's all kinds of different things at stake, and I have heard from multiple people that Notre Dame actually tried to move the game up from 7:30 to 5:30, but USC was against it. And honestly, that ended up being the right call, because the worst part of the day, like the part where there was the most lightning, was right around 5 o'clock. So it definitely would have been delayed if they decided to move the game up a little bit early, but they decided to just roll the dice, and they had a nice little window there during the first half when the conditions were all right. And then at halftime, that rain started to come down, but maybe even more impactful than the rain, the wind really started to pick up. And throwing the ball in the rain is one thing. Like, if it's a wet ball, it makes things harder, obviously, but when it's rainy and windy, it's really hard to grip the ball, especially for the quarterback, and it's really hard to be accurate. So it's not really a shock that CJ Carr did not have a great game. Now, he still doesn't really have an excuse in the first half for the way he played, but still, like, if that's the worst game of the season and he finishes 16 of 26 with a touchdown, he did have an interception that was the second dumbest decision in the game outside of Lincoln Riley's decision to run that reverse pass with Mekhi Lemon. But, I mean, I don't know what CJ Carr was thinking. Actually, it reminded me of a conversation that Luke Smith and I had on the show after the Miami game when we were talking about that amazing first touchdown pass by CJ Carr, and we're like, that was an amazing moment. He's definitely going to try to do that again later in the year, and it's not going to go as well as it did in that instance. And that's exactly what happened. He should have just thrown the ball out of bounds. He did not need to throw it in the end zone. He did. It gets picked. But he was able to shake that off and play a decent game. They were not trying to throw the ball downfield at all. Notre Dame wasn't, because I just think they didn't really trust him in that situation, but especially given the elements. Like, he only had 3 passes over 20 air yards. That is not the CJ Carr that we have seen as of late, where he's been chucking it all over the yard. But that's what makes this Notre Dame offense so dynamic. They're so balanced, right? Fine. You want to take out the run like NC State did last week, then CJ Carr is going to hit you with 342 pass yards. Or if Notre Dame can't pass the ball, they can just give the ball to the 2 running backs and they can lead the way. That is how great offenses thrive, because they can beat you in so many different ways, and that is what Notre Dame's offense is able to do. And I have to continue to give praise to the Notre Dame offensive line, because let's be honest, last week I was really critical of them. I was like, going into the year, we were talking about this group as a potential top 5 unit in the country, and they have not been anywhere near as good. And then you lose Ashton Craig, and you're thinking they're going to take another step back, but Joe Otting was able to come out there. So the offense was able to make up for some of Carr's mistakes, but they had the same issues again in the red zone, and they were able to use CJ Carr, and I love the call to run quarterback power to get him in the end zone and have Jeremiyah Love as a lead blocker, but they just really struggle in these short yardage situations. It's been an issue that is definitely going to be a top priority for Mike Denbrock during this bye week, to figure that out and figure out the red zone, because the kicking situation is grim. And obviously, you can't have Noah Burnett coming back from injury and then completely shank a 31-yarder. That has to be a cheap shot every single time. But I don't know if it is injury or if he was concerned about it getting blocked, because it looked like USC had the snap time down pretty well. But they got to get that figured out. And they also have got to figure out kickoffs. Like, how are they incapable of just kicking it in the end zone every time? They had two kicks go out of bounds in this game, and like, that is just so sloppy. That can't happen. I don't really think that was a product of the environment either. So they're going to have to get that cleaned up, because you're going to need your kicking game. You're going to need to be more efficient in the red zone going forward. Even if Notre Dame ends up blowing out the next several of their opponents, when they get in these bigger games, in which I hope and expect they will if they make it to the college football playoff, you can't leave that many points on the board. And it almost cost them in this game. Even though Notre Dame was still in control, like, they could have won this game by a lot more. Honestly, if CJ Carr doesn't make that mistake in the red zone, they were about to go up 21-10. And then you think about the second half, the missed extra point, the missed field goal, like, all of those points added up. It was still not enough for USC to come back and win. But this team is not a great team yet. I think they're a really good team with some really, really, really good players like Jeremiyah Love and Jadarian Price and all those guys, Leonard Moore on defense as well. But if they want to make a run at the national championship like they did last year, they need to become a great team. And they're not a great team yet. In order to be a great team, they got to lock down a little bit more on defense, specifically Christian Gray, and in the secondary. And then on offense, they need to get better in short yardage. They need to be more efficient in the red zone. And then on special teams, it's feast or famine, right? But they can't have nearly as much famine as they've been dealing with lately. They got to clean some of that stuff up. But look, last year's team wasn't great yet on October 19th. They were great by the end of the year, when they were in December and they're beating Indiana and they're beating USC in the end of November and they're beating Georgia and all that stuff. They became a great team. This team can become a great team if they fix this stuff. And if they do that, this team can make a serious run. But that's really all I have to say about this team and this season, how that game affects, the college football playoff race and all that, because I actually think this is a much bigger win than just talking about what it means for the season. And that's kind of what happens in rivalry games, right? Because to me, this was one of the most emotional regular season wins that I can remember. So coming up next, we're going to relive the highs and lows of the night and talk about why this win is going to matter years from now, coming up right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track. And that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why I started using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch helped me organize my accounts, track my spending, and get a better handle on my investments without having to touch a spreadsheet. You can also review everything with your partner, see your shared goals, and make better financial decisions together. Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where my money's going and how to make it work harder for me. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, let's check in on the chat here. Blake Brown says, got to limit defensive penalties. That is true, and I know the officiating in this game was kind of a disaster. Like, some of Christian Gray's PIs are just PIs. They are what they are. He's a very physical back, so is Leonard Moore, but teams don't even really try throwing at Leonard Moore. They try to throw at Christian Gray a lot, and he gets beat. He's had a bunch of PI penalties already on the year. I think he had 2 in this game. He had a couple early ones against Miami as well. So he's got to clean that up. But I actually did really appreciate this moment that Marcus Freeman talked about in the postgame, where after Gray got beat on Jacoby Lane's touchdown, and then they went at him again on the 2-point conversion, and he had those holding calls earlier on in the game, Marcus Freeman kind of got into him. It's like, hey, man, no one feels sorry for you. There's no sympathy for you right now. You have to figure this out on your own. Then Christian Gray came up with a pick and then had some words from Marcus Freeman. I think that was good. Marcus Freeman said he loved it. He loved that he went back at him, that he took that hard coaching and then made a play out there and came up big when the Irish needed it. So I agree. They got to cut out on the defensive penalties, though. I think the officiating in this game was pretty one-sided, although we have to admit, as Notre Dame fans, they missed a hold on that Jadarian Price kickoff return for a touchdown. I couldn't believe they didn't call it. I saw it happen live, and as Jadarian Price was running to the end zone, I was looking around trying to find the flag, and then I didn't really accept that he had scored the touchdown, and I could celebrate the moment until about like 5 or 10 seconds after he scored because I was so certain they were going to call it. But they also missed a lot of other stuff, some holds that they didn't call on USC. But it ended up being pretty one-sided if you look at the accepted penalties. Notre Dame had 8 penalties called on them, 8 accepted penalties called on them for 96 yards. USC only had 1 for 5 yards, but there was also a holding call that Notre Dame denied. So still, that was pretty frustrating, though. Iraq 986. There were about 20 commits / recruits there, if I'm not mistaken. That is true. There was actually way more than 20. There was like dozens and dozens of recruits, including some big-time names like 5-star running back Keeman Spell, who just decommitted from Penn State. And I would say that I would expect some good news for the Irish here in the very near future about where he is going to end up in college, so stay tuned for that. We're also going to have Steve Wiltfong, recruiting insider for Rivals and On3. I have never had him on the show. He's one of the biggest names in like the national recruiting industry. He's actually going to be on the show this week to talk about this huge Notre Dame official visit weekend, so stay tuned for that on Tuesday. What else we got here in the chat? Terry, the kicking game is not good, let alone top 12 in the country. No doubt about that. But one thing that I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you can relate to this, but at the end of that game, I just had to let out a yell, and I was just so happy and so relieved. One, because that game was super stressful, and it felt like Notre Dame was doing everything they could to keep USC in it late in the game. And I was just like, man, can they not put this away? Like when they had that one call where it felt like Christian Gray had the game-sealing interception there for a moment, I never thought that was going to be called an interception once they showed like one replay after that. But when you think about all the build-up to this game, not just in the week leading up, but for months, right? Once it became pretty clear that USC was actually considering opting out of this rivalry and that the future was in serious doubt, that they were trying to come to terms on a long-term deal, and Notre Dame and USC were they just have very different approaches to the situation right now. And the idea that Notre Dame might not play USC every single year after this game is like a legitimate thing. And the fact that that was on the table, and then you add in the fact that Chad Bowden left Notre Dame to become the general manager at USC, and then after he made that decision, he had some interesting words to the media and had sort of some backhanded compliments and just passive-aggressive remarks about why he left Notre Dame and why he's at USC, and just knowing his personality and the way that he operates. Like, that's all at play. The social media stuff after USC got a Notre Dame legacy to commit to them back in the spring, and they had this video about like building your own legacy, and they're all aimed at Notre Dame. So there's all this stuff going on, and then the jarring between Marcus Freeman and Lincoln Riley, not necessarily directly to each other, but just with what they were saying about the rivalry. Like Lincoln Riley had a quote last week that's just so classic Lincoln. When they asked him about the future of the rivalry, he's like, yeah, I'd love to have it. We're still trying to come to a deal that doesn't just work for one side. It actually works for both. So clearly taking a shot at Notre Dame there. So you have all of this being built up, and this could be the last game for a while and maybe a long time. And you realize that, man, like whoever wins this game could have bragging rights for a long time. And let's be honest, like it still stings that Michigan has bragging rights after what they did to Notre Dame in 2019. I'd love for them to play again soon, because the fact that that is the last memory I have from a Notre Dame-Michigan game is not great. And I did not want that to be the case with USC. But fortunately, Notre Dame came up. They delivered. Marcus Freeman is so good at getting his team ready for big games. This was a huge game. And I loved how transparent he was about it in the postgame. Like coaches, sometimes the coach speak answer of like, oh, every game is the most important. We're just focused on one game at a time. But Marcus Freeman was asked if this game meant more. And he's like, yes, this game means more. It's a rivalry game. I was telling the team, I remember rivalries from from Pee Wee days. That's what his message was to the team. And you could tell in the video when the team is coming down the tunnel, like Marcus Freeman is just in his zone. He wasn't in that mode where he was like yelling at his team and yelling at the crowd like he was before Texas A&M, but you could tell. Like you could see the former player and Marcus Freeman getting hyped up and ready to go for that game. And that is why it's such a big win. Like to get that win after everything that went down in the months leading up to it, to just handle it all on the field, and not only to just win the game, but to just impose their will physically. Notre Dame was a way more physical team. They ran all over them. They ran through them, around them. There was a lot of trash talking going on in the game. It felt like after the game there might be a little bit of a situation on the field, but it turns out Notre Dame players were actually just going up to Kennedy Urlacher and showing him some love, and then it just kind of looked like it could be a potential fight, so I think other people just kind of ran over to the situation because they just saw a bunch of people in different helmets sort of all come together in one spot. But It was fine. I don't think it was anything serious there in that moment. But on the field, there was a lot of jawing. Jeremiyah Love said that he wasn't having a whole lot of good conversations with the people on the other side. But I love that. Like, that's what makes college football great. These really passionate rivalries, the hatred, like, it all makes for nights like that. And that's why it was just such a fun experience being there in the crowd and just watching that game unfold and seeing Notre Dame come out on top over the rival. And Notre Dame has been dominating this rivalry for the past 15 years, really, dating back to 2010. USC has still not won in Notre Dame Stadium since 2011. That feels like an eternity ago, basically because it was. So the fact that Notre Dame was able to do all this, they were able to get the win, is so huge, not only for this season, but beyond, because every year there's like a few games that really stand out. Right now in 2024, there's a bunch of games that really stand out with the win over Penn State, the win over Georgia, the win over USC, and the win over Texas A&M in the season opener. We have not had that signature moment for Notre Dame this season. As fans, for the team, like, so far, the best thing that they have done is come up short against Miami and come up short against Texas A&M. Like, there were moments during the game, but we have not been able to really celebrate a big-time win like this one yet all year long. And now we finally have that. And I really believe that, like, years from now, we're going to be talking about this game. We're going to be talking about Jeremiyah Love's 228 rushing yards. We're going to be talking about Jadarian Price's kickoff return for a touchdown. The second time that Jadarian Price has done that to Lincoln Riley and USC. I wonder if they were getting flashbacks when he was taking that ball to the house. And we're going to talk about Luke Tauch's interception. I haven't even mentioned him by name yet on this show, but he deserves some props because he was the one who came up with the game-sealing interception, the third one of the game. So all of this stuff matters, and it matters more because rivalry games matter more, and those are the ones we think about the most, we care about the most. And now Notre Dame is able to go out there, get another win in the biggest intersectional rivalry in all of college football and all of sports. And no matter what happens with Notre Dame this season, this is going to be a win that we're going to remember for a really long time. And I'm just really, really excited about it. If you can't tell, I'm like kind of losing my voice. I'm pretty exhausted from the whole weekend, the travel, just being on my feet all day. Night games really take it out of me, but that was just a special, special win. And I'm excited to talk about it on this show. So before we go, let's hear from the chat real quick. Adam Bauer says, we hate USC. I'm with you. I hate USC more than any team. Michigan, I think, like, the rivalry is obviously intense, but the fact that we don't play them every year, and also even when they were playing Michigan frequently, I just felt like there was just something different about USC. Maybe it's because of how much they dominated Notre Dame back when I was a kid, but I really just love beating USC. It is just such a great feeling. Even when USC has down years, like last year, beating USC, even though they were, 6-5 going into that game, it still just means the world. What else we got here? All right. Any news? Okay, here we go. Tim Clone, any news on our offensive lineman that got hurt late? Mr. Vegas. I don't know where the Mr. Vegas thing is from, but I could say if you're talking about Billy Schrouth, I don't know. I mean, when he went down earlier in the game, it looked real serious. I mean, he was clutching his knee, and then he left the game, and then he just was gutting it out. He was just being an absolute warrior throughout the second half. You could tell he was not anywhere near 100%. He was like limping off the field every time, but he's just going out there, gutting it out for his teammates. And then he looks like he hurt it again late in the game, so I'm sure that he's really sore today. I hope that it's just not a tear. But, I mean, just credit to him, man, for going out there gutting with his teammates, because you're already down, you're starting center. If you lose your guard as well, that's just a really tough spot to be in. And even though I like Sullivan Absher, Billy Schrouth is one of the best guards in the entire country, so you need him out there. And we'll take one more message from the chat here before we call it a day. Colton Fisher predicts Luke Smith's 3 things he didn't like: the kicking game, the weather, and letting USC fans buy alcohol in the stadium. We'll definitely talk about the kicking game more for sure. The weather was honestly, not fun in the moment, but I think now that it's over, it's kind of going to be more memorable, right? Like, you're just going to remember being in the rain, just kind of braving the elements, watching Notre Dame go out there and beat their rival, and the fact that Notre Dame was able to handle the weather so much better than USC did. I actually think it kind of makes it better now, but yeah, in the moment when it was really, really cold, or starting to get really cold and really windy, and it was just pouring down rain, that was not a whole lot of fun. We'll take one more, actually. Dave Rakowski asked about Jeremiyah Love's Heisman chances. I think he's absolutely in the race now, especially with Carson Beck playing just terrible on Friday night. He was the odds-on favorite going into the weekend. Fernando Mendoza had another big game for Indiana. He's probably just going to light it up the rest of the year because I don't think they're going to lose. But he's probably up there. Ty Simpson from Alabama. He's generating a lot of steam after Alabama just knocked off Tennessee this weekend. But Jeremiyah Love's going to be right in the mix. I don't think he's going to have the stats and the production to win the award because you have to do so much more as a running back, but there's a real chance that Jeremiyah Love gets invited to New York, and that would be really cool because it'd be the first time that that's happened with a Notre Dame player since Manti Te'o back in 2012, but it's been a long time since Notre Dame had a Heisman Trophy winner, but I don't think it'll be this year, but just the fact that they have Jeremiyah Love, I would just say enjoy him, appreciate him, because he is a special, special talent, and he's only got about 5 more regular season games left in Notre Dame uniform, and then hopefully a few more playoff games to go with that. But that is going to do it for Sunday Night Live. Thank you to everyone who hung out live with us on the show and for chiming in. This has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we were able to do this. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, or rate and review the podcast. It really does help out a lot. I'm going to be back here on Tuesday with Luke Smith. We're going to have his Boots on the Ground report. I already have my own. I've already talked about most of it today. And then we're going to get our final thoughts on the win before the bye. And I would just say on the way out, enjoy the win, Irish fans. That one was a good one. And I will see you on Tuesday.